into Texans today, everybody. I'm your host, Jeremy Chuggs, and on today's show, some jaw-dropping NFL draft news that will impact the Houston Texans. I'm going to be breaking it all down to you. What Adam Schefter, Jordan Schultz reported today has a direct impact on your Houston Texans, and I'm going to tell you why. But speaking of Adam Schefter, speaking of these guys, who are big J journalists, the big media, I'll tell you this. A reason why you got to hit that subscribe button, a reason why you got to join in every single week here on Texans Today is a yearly subscription to ESPN Plus. That's going to run you about $120 a year. A yearly subscription to Texans Today. It's going to cost you $0 and 0 pennies. In this economy, in today's world, you cannot beat these prices of 100% free. So if you want Texans content never behind a paywall, well, you're in the right spot. It's here at Texans Today. Make sure you go down and hit that subscribe button. Now, let's get into the nitty-gritty of what today's video is all about. First, let's talk about this report from Jordan Schultz. Sources, Alabama quarterback Jalen Milroe had private workouts with the Saints and Browns that were described as impressive. He also met with key members of the Jets offensive staff and the Steelers prior to his pro day last month. Very interesting. Jalen Milroe, a quarterback, gaining some steam as we head into the NFL draft. And we all know teams in round one love to draft them some quarterbacks with some high potential. So could Jalen Milroe maybe sneak into the first round of this year's NFL draft? Let's go on with Adam Schefter adding a little bit more fuel to the fire. 2+ weeks ahead of the NFL draft, there are signs that point to the Browns now using the number 2 overall pick on Colorado standout Travis Hunter. Now, this is important because I know a lot of people probably have been on the train that the Browns aren't going to draft Shedeur Sanders for a couple weeks now, but now with the reports that the Browns are kind of keying in, they're eyeing Travis Hunter at pick number 2, that could mean several things because the Browns obviously don't have their quarterback situation fully figured out going into next year with Deshaun Watson probably missing, if not the entirety of next season, the majority of next season. They could be still in the market for a quarterback. And past Cam Ward, there's really not a guarantee of any of the top quarterbacks going before the Texans pick at 25. We could live in a situation, we could live in a world where Shedeur Sanders, Jaxson Dart, and Jalen Milroe, arguably the second, third, and fourth best quarterback in this year's draft class, are on the board at pick 25 when the Texans are on the clock. So what does this all mean? Could a team sneak back into the first round, trade up with the Houston Texans to select one of these quarterbacks? There's already been murmurs. There's already been talks about this happening where teams going back into round one to get a quarterback. We've seen it all the way going back to Lamar Jackson where the Ravens traded right back into the very end of round one to select Lamar. So I'm going to ask you this question real quick. How many quarterbacks do you think go in round one of this year's NFL draft? Do you think it's just one? Do you think it's only Cam Ward? Do you think maybe it's 2 with Shedeur? Maybe it's a couple with Jaxson Dart or with a guy like Jalen Milroe? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments section because I really do think Caserio loves a good draft day trade. And if teams are calling at pick 25, he will be listening. He will be. And we know behind Howie Roseman of the Philadelphia Eagles, the second GM who loves trading more than anybody else on draft day is this guy right here, Nick Caserio. So you would be a fool if you didn't think the Texans would be fielding calls as we get closer to the NFL draft and while they're even on the clock at pick 25. And as I said, it's not anything new that the Texans are in trade rumors, in trade conversations in the 2025 NFL draft. Hell, we broke this Bleacher Report article down last week where they had this trade idea, the Browns trading back up into round one and the Texans getting their second and third round pick, which I think this would be a great deal for the Houston Texans because as we've mentioned, there are quite a bit of QB needy teams still in the market for a signal caller, right? The Cleveland Browns being one of them. The New York Giants, I know they signed Russell Wilson, but they could be looking for a long-term answer. The New Orleans Saints, as mentioned, they talked with Jalen Milroe, had a private workout with them. The Pittsburgh Steelers, the Las Vegas Raiders. I know they have Geno Smith, but really his contract, they're looking for a successor for him even now because he's getting up there in age. And they're not on this list, but also to mention the New York Jets. How confident are they in Justin Fields? So there could be a lot of teams that aren't willing to spend a top 20 pick on a quarterback, but still want to get somebody at the end of round one. And that's where the Texans come into play because DeMeco Ryans, he said it last year. They love the middle rounds. And this was more predicated to the Texans having 2 picks in last year's NFL draft, the 2024 draft, where he said rounds 2 or 3 are kind of the sweet spot for the Houston Texans. But I believe that to be true with the Texans draft strategy going into this year as well. I think Nick Caserio, DeMeco Ryans wouldn't mind trading back out of that pick 25 and picking up multiple picks in round 2 and round 3 because as we look at their track record last year, look at what they did together. They got Kamari Lassiter. They got Blake Fisher. They got Kalen Bullock. 3 guys who arguably are all hits in round 2 and round 3. And you can maybe even add Cade Stover into that list. So I think it is very much a possibility that the Texans go ahead and trade out of round 1 with one of these quarterback-needy teams going up for a guy like a Jalen Milroe, a Jaxson Dart, or even a Shedeur Sanders. Now, with all this talk about trading out, what are some guys that the Texans might be willing to trade back for or be comfortable trading back and knowing that they'll still get them at the top of round 2? Coming up, I'll talk about some top trade down targets. One guy who's been thrown around a ton on Texans Twitter today. You might already know who I'm talking about here in just a moment. But before I get into all of that, I couldn't do today's show if it wasn't for our amazing sponsors, Game Time, the official ticketing partner of Texans today. It's my place to get last-second tickets, and it should be your place too. Hey, the Rockets are red hot in fuego. And if you want to get tickets to any Rockets game, maybe a Rockets playoff game, use our ticketing partner, Game Time. You can get great deals on last-second tickets and even see your seat view before you buy the tickets. All-in pricing shows you what you pay without hidden fees or expenses. And my favorite feature, the Game Time picks, basically filters out all the fluff and shows you the very best bang for your buck, the very best deals on the app. So they will make sure you have the best deals on whatever ticket you're trying to go to. If you're trying to go to a Houston Rockets game, maybe a Houston Astros game, maybe if there's a concert, comedy show, something in your area, they got you covered. All you got to do is download the Game Time app and use that code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, but again, use that code right there, CHATSPORTS, CHATSPORTS, for $20 off your first purchase. You won't regret it, and I promise you, you will get the best deals on last-second tickets using our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app today. What time is it? It's game time. Now, let's look at some of the top trade down targets for the Houston Texans. And somebody whose name has been thrown out a ton, especially because he just visited with the Houston Texans on a top 30 visit, is Oregon tackle Josh Conerly Jr. And somebody who, ESPN's Jordan Reed said this is a really good fit with the Houston Texans. It's somebody that Texans fans should be eyeing. And I tend to agree. A guy who has been getting some end of round 1 hype. The Texans obviously need some help along the offensive line. So if they trade back into the 30s in the beginning of round 2, if he's on the board, he could definitely be somebody that the Texans target to start round 2 if they decide to trade back. I do like the idea of getting Josh Conerly Jr., somebody who maybe you slide in there at left guard and then eventually replaces Cam Robinson at left tackle. Or, hey, maybe you even let those two guys battle it out in camp and you draft a couple more offensive linemen for insurance. But the Texans are for sure going to draft an offensive lineman early in this draft. Maybe it's Josh Conerly. Maybe it's somebody like a Tyler Booker, who he's been all over the place in this pre-draft process, right? He was up, and then during the combine, he was definitely down, right? Those RAS scores, the relative athletic scores, didn't do him any favors. He did not perform well at the NFL combine, but when you put on the tape, he still is one of the top guards in this draft class. And if he's there into the 30s, like I said, with the Texans trade back, I could definitely see them looking at a guy like Tyler Booker, another Alabama guy, has ties with Will Anderson. We know DeMeco Ryans loves his Alabama guys. And when talking about Tyler Booker, multiple guys have said he's kind of like the Will Anderson of the Alabama offensive line. So if you get somebody with a Will Anderson mentality, we know the Texans love that swarm mentality. Maybe that fits exactly with Tyler Booker, and maybe he's a guy that the Texans could target to start round 2. Now, this is somebody who I've been screaming from the mountaintops that should be the Texans' #1 target. I still believe would be the Texans' #1 target if they stay there at pick 25, and that is Donovan Jaxson, offensive lineman from Ohio State. I had a meeting with the Tennessee Titans today, which worries me a little bit because I do love Jaxson and his versatility. I think he could be one of the steals of this NFL draft as a guard tackle flex, somebody who has a lot of positional flexibility and somebody who performed well at Ohio State at the highest level. He started at left guard, and then when Josh Simmons went down, he started at left tackle and was fantastic through all of the college football playoffs, leading Ohio State to a national championship. I think Donovan Jaxson could be a guy that when we look back in 5-10 years, we're like, wow, how did he slide all the way to the end of round 1, or how did he make it all the way to round 2? I think he's going to be one of those guys in this draft class. Now, I talked about 3 offensive linemen. Let's go if they don't want to go O-line whenever they trade down. I think the #1 guy you should be looking at is Jalen Noel, wide receiver from Iowa State. I was contemplating putting him or either Luther Bird in here because he's been falling down draft boards as well. But if they trade maybe a little further back, maybe they're getting one of those picks in the 40s if they trade back that far. Maybe they look at a guy like a Jalen Noel to add to this wide receiver room, another downfield threat for C.J. Stroud, adding somebody who pairs nicely with a X-style receiver like Nico Collins, somebody like a Christian Kirk who you can move around, and then you add Jalen Noel. I think it would be a great fit for the Texans. He's been getting a lot of end of round 1 hype as well, so I could see the Texans looking at a guy like Jalen Noel to start round 2. And lastly, this might be a cop-out answer, but maybe a BPA, best player available, somebody who's falling down draft boards, maybe a top defensive lineman. We know the Texans have been looking at a lot of defensive tackles. They already have brought in Joshua Farmer from Florida State. They've talked to TJ Sanders from South Carolina. They talked to multiple defensive linemen, both the guys from Texas A&M. So maybe if one of those guys falls, maybe if, I don't know, a safety like Malachi Starks or a corner like Siobhan Revel Jr., somebody who they absolutely love in the secondary, falls. That could be somebody who they take if they trade back out of round 1 into round 2. I wouldn't count out anything for the Houston Texans because they already have key guys at the most important positions, right? Besides left tackle, they have their quarterback already figured out. They have their edge rushers already basically figured out. They have their top cornerback figured out, and they have a top receiving threat in Nico Collins. The only major glaring need is at offensive line, and maybe they feel like they already took that with Cam Robinson in free agency. I don't know, but I could see them going BPA. I could see them saying, hey, the value's just staring us right in the face. This guy is a round 1 guy. I don't know how he fell all the way to round 2, but maybe they take a chance on one of those guys who falls in this draft class. Now, that's all I have for you on today's video, folks, but if you made it to the end of today's video, you are an absolute real one. Shout out to you. Thank you so much for joining in on Texans Today and watching the entire video. If you did, go down and spam those H's in the comments section so I can show you some love. Appreciate everybody showing love here, everybody who subscribed. And hey, if you made it to the end of the video and you're not subscribed, what are we doing, right? Hey, we must be doing something right. Free content all year long. All you got to do is go down and hit that subscribe button.